Hello and welcome to another episode of the FemiNinja Project, and thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. And as you know, on the FemiNinja Project, we are all about personal empowerment, personal safety, and self-defense, taking care of ourselves and our loved ones. And I have a fabulous expert on the subject with me today. His name is John Brewer. He is the author. He is an author and special forces veteran with more than 10 years experience enabling those who act to defend life, family, and country. Knowing firsthand the importance of self-reliance, John has made it his mission to enable and empower others so they may live healthy, thriving lives. He is the author of the upcoming book on safety and self-defense titled Self-Defense for Self-Development. John, thank you so much for being here and welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
And of course, the first thing I do want to say is once again, thank you for your service.
Oh, no problem. Thank you.
Okay, so tell us how you got so passionate about self-defense and self-development.
Yeah. So actually, it's funny because my wife asked me that the other day because she thinks that I should probably lead with that a lot of times, and a lot of times I don't. So originally, when I first started out in my career after college, when I first joined the military, that was more of I was just in a point in my life to where I didn't have any ties, and I was able to, go on and do things that, that people that do have kind of relationships or things of that nature they can't really go about and do. But what ended up happening is throughout my military career, I started understanding, the way of the world. Obviously, outside of my hometown in Eastern North Carolina, you get, if you don't kind of travel out and start branching out a little bit, you kind of get closed into your perspective and don't really understand, what truly is going on outside of your the world that your little bubble, so to speak. And so once once I was in the military and started seeing the world for more of what it really is, obviously I don't know everything about the world, but I know a little bit of it to have this idea. And what it ended up being is that I one my true passion is protecting children, right? And I really wanted to go into a field of counter child exploitation, and kind of like the whole counter sex trafficking thing and this that nature. Now, obviously, that field within itself is kind of closed off in a way because if you're not law enforcement or have some type of social service background, you're kind of pushed out, and duly, rightfully so, because obviously there's chances of internal threats and things of that nature. But at the same time, I started really rethinking, once I like I said, the perspective came from the military side, but then I've always had this passion of truly trying to protect children because they can't protect themselves. And so what ended up doing is I kind of adjusted my focus instead of focusing on, because a lot of it is internet based now. Obviously, a lot of investigations do happen in person too as well. And instead of trying to go into that field, I decided to go back to what my bread and butter would be, which is just all around security, because obviously that's needed too. And so I decided to truly focus on that because that's what I was doing overseas. When it comes to our deployments overseas, obviously some of that was our own combat missions and doing what we needed to do outside of a partner force or working with the country itself. But obviously in those types of conflicts, we are working very closely with the indigenous people and they're in a partner force. And that really gave me the perspective of enabling people rather than just giving someone the solution or trying to do everything for somebody, because that doesn't work, because truly all that does is foster a dependency, which is not a good thing either. So truly what I like to do with a book is provide a sense of independence, confidence, and I just provide the template for security, safety, self-defense, things of that nature. And some of it, obviously I give examples, but I try not to give answers, because truly self-defense within itself is a very broad subject. And it'd be very dangerous for me to try to give people an answer to something, knowing that every situation is different. But at the same time, I do like for the readers or whoever to think for themselves and really come up with a solution for themselves, because in that way, that's where they empower themselves. Because everybody likes when they come up with a solution themselves. Obviously, it's very easy to get the answer, and that brings a little bit of sense of gratification. But truly, what brings that true satisfaction is when the individual is able to come up with it themselves and they have ownership of it.
That basically ties into your critical thinking skills, correct?
Yes, and truly that's a big segment of the book is problem solving. I try to have that a common theme throughout, because everybody knows what problem solving is, even if you don't know the true uh, academic, so to speak, steps that have been applied to problem solving. But everybody does it on a regular basis. But one thing we don't really know is that how to really refine it, especially to meet our needs and things of that nature. We do problem solving, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we're an expert on it. And so, what the book also does is just give you that problem solving cycle, and then how it applies to each segment of the book, which goes through 5 different sections. And so really, that's all self defense really is. It's just problem solving in a high stress, high stakes situation, and you have to make decisions really fast, really quickly, and then act on them, and then adapt as needed. And that's really where that problem solving, critical thinking comes in.
Which I think is something that a lot of people are not used to, especially
Oh no.
trying to problem solve in a very stressful,
Mhm.
situation where maybe you're under, you're under threat or conflict or whatever. So how do you go about, explaining that to people or teaching people how to do that? And because even if they don't have very good problem solving skills initially, it is something that they can work on, they can train, and they can improve.
Yeah, true. So kind of how I apply it to everyday situations is one, the fight, flight, freeze, which now it's fight, flight. What is it? Fight? They added a fourth one in
I
there, but
think it's
truly the
fight, flight, freeze, or bite.
oh really?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the
And
last
so
one I
yeah.
heard.
Yeah. And so really, and that's the thing is, that response can happen to any situation. That's your body's automatic response to some type of stress. And I use stress as in, a stimulus that introduces change, not like stress as if I'm stressed out, but stress that's just something that makes that a stimulus that causes some type of change. And so and so what it is, public speaking is a good example. When a lot of people are deathly afraid of public speaking. So what happens is normally they get up there and they freeze and they don't know, they're kind of stuck in their thought. They don't know how to get out of it. Maybe they start shuffling around, things of that nature. And that's the best example I can give the people to the response of like a life or death situation, because it's all the same. Your body kind of treats it as a life or death situation. And I'm not a psychologist or I haven't done extensive research in the method, but that's truly kind of how it is that your body, no matter what the stimulus is almost going to treat certain things similarly. And so that's why and so when I'm conveying a type of message about life or death type of situations and how your body responds to it, it just goes back to the fight, flight, and freeze response. Also, truly scenario-based training is something that I really harp on. I truly believe in scenario-based training. Obviously, it's kind of hard to do. Hopefully, in the future, especially with virtual reality and things of that nature, it can kind of be you won't be able to get the full experience, obviously, but at least just that little bit of exposure will be enough to start giving people a little bit of perspective and a little bit of insight on how their body naturally responds to these types of stimulus. And then they're able to get that foundational baseline and then build from there. Because that's another thing that I harp on in the book, is that if you're outside law enforcement in the military, odds are, and hopefully so, you're not going to have a life or death scenario arise. And so it's very hard to understand that perspective, because we don't know what we don't know, and then until we actually experience that, we're truly not going to understand it. But like I said, the fight, flight, freeze response is a very good, to any situation, and public speaking being a big one. Is if anybody has ever had an experience, which I think most of us do, public speaking, just that initial freeze or whatever, your heart racing, you're starting to
Mhm.
breathe a little harder, starting to sweat, on your palms and things like that. That is probably going to be your initial response to any life or death situation. And then once you understand it and you realize that, one, in public speaking, that you're, truly the only harm that might come is that, you get embarrassed a little bit or your ego gets bruised a little bit. But, for the most part, you're fine. Once you understand that, you know, it's very easy to kind of start to build that growth and that development to get over that response. And then that will carry over into the life or death situation to where, yes, there still be a significant response, but at least now you have that foundation that you've developed and trained over time, to where, it's going to be controllable, at least, instead of just complete auto response. And then you're kind of at the mercy of your body.
Mhm. I like that fact of exposure rather than avoidance, because your body can adjust and get used to it. And I mean, I've taken quite a few workshops for public speaking and, been on stage many times, but it's really interesting because there's still, no matter how many times you've done it, there's still a little bit of that bubbling nervousness or whatever inside of you, but it's not debilitating.
Oh yeah. I actually still have, even with training and combatives and jujitsu, because I wrestled in high school. I always got like a nervousness before competition, but it was never crippling. It was always just, something that was in my stomach. And I could tell that my adrenaline was starting to be
Hmm.
released. And then, my heart rate, which is a good thing because obviously I
Yeah.
need that,
Hmm.
during the event itself. And then same thing with training jujitsu. Now, even if it's just training, I start to get a little bit of that nervousness. And it's not because I'm truly nervous. It's just my body's preparing for what's about to happen. And I'm not a big, I won't say that I'm a proponent of phobia type exposure to where you
Hmm.
just, if you're scared of spiders, someone dumps spiders on you or something like that. But at the same time, the more you are exposed, especially in controlled environments, which is
Hmm.
truly the biggest benefit, is if you can control that environment and start
Hmm.
to slowly apply a
Hmm.
certain stimulus and expose yourself to things, then you will build up kind of that resiliency. And then not only that, but that development. And I do believe in that. I do believe in exposure, not all at once, because that can be dangerous, but especially if it can be, in steps and increments, that's definitely going to benefit you in the long run.
And that's a great analogy or a great example with the spiders. I mean, I'm a real very snake phobic. Oh, but
Oh yeah.
over the years, it's gotten a lot better just because, I have more of an understanding
Mhm.
of their function and their importance, of course, in the environment. So I think that's the same thing, is to have that level of understanding when it's something that you fear so much. I think a lot of times it's just because you don't really fully understand it. And in my martial arts journey, I've gone back to that a lot, because the first actual 2 years of my training, I was absolutely terrified. But I kept going to class
Yeah.
anyway because I knew, I could feel that something was changing deep inside of myself.
Yeah.
So as far as, applying this to self-defense, and self growth and self improvement, how do you then continue to build upon that?
Yeah, so it's mostly going to be established by goals. So in the book, I have the reader not only establish safety goals but also life goals, because truly I want everything to align, because I don't want you to be interested in combatives, and then I tell and then through the book I say, well, maybe you want to go train in firearms, because if you're not interested in firearms, then don't you don't have to use that, those types of tools and things like that.
Mhm.
The methodology should fit your personal goals, and then also what your hobbies, pretty much. And so that's why, like, so everything is kind of based off goals, and those goals can change, obviously, because as we grow and develop, maybe our interests do change, or maybe you have fulfilled that one goal and then now it's time to move on to the next goal. And truly that's what I'd like to happen, is that within safety goals, especially if it has to do with home defense, is a very easy example. Once you fulfill your safety goals for your home defense, whether that's making a plan, getting a security system in place, buying a security system, and or subscribing to one of those monitoring uh, companies, something like that. Once that's fulfilled and you feel happy with it, obviously there's times where you will review that, and you'll go back and you'll make sure that everything is up to date, especially as things change in current events and things like that, because methodology is always changing. Criminals are always adapting, and we should always adapt to them. And not only that, but maybe foresee a little bit beyond, what they see, and really start to, look years from now and see what could be the threats from there. But that's kind of a different story. But that's pretty much what it is, just step by step kind of methodology to where, we focus on a goal. It could be a very simplistic goal to where maybe it is just combatives. Maybe you just want to get in better shape. That's obviously part of it too. And then once you have that, maybe you don't even fulfill that goal completely, but you realize through that journey that you start to, there is something else that you want to kind of, bring along into the goal development, or whatever it might be. And then so from there, it's just a step-by-step process. And it's also cyclic, to where we're also just refining what's there. And then if we want to introduce something or take something away, we take something away. And it's just refinement and going through that whole process. Just like any other exercise training program. Obviously, you're not going to do the same thing day in and day out, week after week, year after year. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But at the same time, if you're really looking for whether it's on purpose or not, there is going to be a little bit of adaptation just from whatever's going on.
I like the way you said that, because there's not really a definite end to it, because it is personal development, it's personal growth, and you are constantly changing, evaluating, improving your skills, going in different directions. It's kind of like a lifelong pursuit, and I don't want the audience to think, oh my gosh, that's overwhelming. It's not. It's actually really empowering.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, truly, and that's why I want it to align with your hobbies and personal interests, because if it does align with your hobbies and personal interests, then it's not going to feel like a chore. It's not going to feel like, something you're being forced to do. It's going to go along with your natural rhythm of your life and your daily routine. And then it just becomes something that is a part of your life, rather than something that's forced into it, like a wedge. And then especially because my wife is kind of the same way, where anything that feels like a chore, which a lot of us are like that, she's not going to do it. And so that's why alignment is key with, and I harp on that in the book too, to where if it doesn't align, then it either needs to be adjusted to align, or maybe it just needs to get thrown away completely. Another good example is running, right? If you're a good runner and that's all you really like to do, maybe that is part of your safety planning. Maybe you just run, and that's completely fine, because if it keeps you safe and out of harm's way, then yes, absolutely. And you are fast and you can run for long distance and get out of that area, then absolutely do it. And so that becomes part of your training program. You're just going to continue to run. That becomes part of your safety plans. And any type of safety plan you're doing, you're always looking for exits. You're always looking for that avenue to get out. And then you're making sure you can, turn on the jets and get out of there. And so that's why, I'm not trying to turn anybody into a soldier or a karate expert or anything like that, because it all falls back onto what your personal interests are and your life goals.
As you were explaining or talking about the running part, yeah, I was thinking about taking your skills, like you started with, as an example, your home and your safety goal and your safety plan for your home, and then taking that out into, the community. If you're running, that again, I'm going back to that awareness component of it. And you mentioned, where are the exits, where are, the escape routes, knowing that ahead of time and being cognizant of that is really going to make a difference if the stuff hits the fan and you need to make a quick exit. So how do you train people, especially when you're going into, new buildings, that type of thing, new environment that you haven't been into before? Because one of my pet peeves is watching, especially women walking around with their cell phones, and their faces are just glued to their cell phone. It's like, there is no text message that is so important, that's going to, be more important than your personal safety and your environmental and situational awareness. So if you can touch on that, it's one of my pet peeves, obviously. I get very passionate about that.
So yeah, So the whole awareness piece is an aspect of training that has to be trained. You know, it's not something you're going to be able to read and just pick up. It is something that you need to practice. And but that's the good thing about awareness, is that it can be practiced anywhere. Um, really, truly, what it comes down to is, uh, you know, one, you're being aware. First, you have to be aware of the people around you, right? Those are going to be the threats, unless you're in this environment that there are other risks involved, like construction zones where debris is falling, or things like that. But you know, we'll just specify that it's, you know, human beings that we're worried about right now. It could be animals too. And so,
Mhm.
you know, you first you get a sense of who's around you. You know, if no one's doing it, and we all know what normal looks like. So that's truly what your you know, your baseline is going to be is normal. If everybody is, you know, minding their business and everything's
Mhm.
going the way that society goes, then usually there's nothing to worry about, and maybe you relax a little bit and, you know, sit down, have your
Mhm.
coffee or whatever you're doing at the time.
Mhm.
But it's those times to where you look up and you see, like, you know, just somebody kind of in the you know, maybe at a counter or something, and they're just keep like looking around, and they're not like they're paying attention to a bunch of other stuff rather than what they would normally be doing, which is either being in their phone, or, you know,
Mhm.
talking to someone, or just kind of standing there and maybe not looking around. But, you know, we all know that if someone's just like, you know, kind of wide-eyed, and or maybe they're fidgeting with something, then that's a little weird. And I'm not saying that that person is a bad person and they're about to do anything bad, but what I'm saying is that maybe I take another 10 seconds to just be like, you know,
Mhm.
what's this guy, what's going on with this person? Because
Mhm.
maybe they're having you know, a health crisis, and maybe I need
Mhm.
to intervene. And especially because big thing, like when people go down with medical emergencies, and you know, which that kind of goes into the bystander effects and things like that, which I also go into my book. But that's normally what I talk about is, and it does, like I said, it doesn't have to be threats. It's just anything that's outside of the normal realm of what we see
Mhm.
in society on a day-to-day basis. And then, yes, anytime I enter a building, I'm always trying to see, is my exit the same as my entrance, or is there
Mhm.
another exit? Um, I am that type of guy to where I don't like anything behind me. So if I'm sitting in a restaurant, I'm always sitting up against the wall, and I'm always got a good vantage point. And that kind of is, I mean, that's hyper vigilant. It truly is. And I don't claim PTSD at all, but that is something that I kind of have as I go through my life. I realize that I am hyper vigilant, and I'm always thinking about that type of stuff. Um, and so you're looking for entrance exits. You're maintaining avenues that you can reach those entrances or exits. So
Mhm.
I hate crowds. I don't like to be in crowds. So if I'm ever in a crowd and I'm in a tight spot where shoulder to shoulder and I feel like I can't move, I'm trying to get onto the outside of that crowd so that I can have better mobility and things of that nature. Um, and so just, and there's more to it, but that's kind of how you start to think, to where
Mhm.
normally you're just looking for what's normal, and if there's something abnormal, you take a little bit of time to really assess that situation. And then outside of that, just the normal environment, which not normal environment, but the environment you're in, whether it be a
Mhm.
structure of a building, or whether you're outside and there's trails, you know, or the road to where, you know, you're on a sidewalk, and then especially, you know, I do it too, but at the same time, if you're walking on the sidewalk and you're on your phone, I've seen people cross the street, you know, looking at their phone and things like that. And it's just like, man, you know, good thing that drivers were looking out, but at the same time, you know, you have to be aware of just your environment, and how you fit in with that, and then also how others fit in with that.
Yeah, I remember it wasn't that long ago. I was at a local, shopping center or whatever, and crossing the street, and there was a woman in front of me she was holding a baby, and she had a little girl with her who was about 3 or 4 years old. And all of a sudden, she stopped right in the middle of the crosswalk and let go of the little girl's hand and handed her a cell phone. And then, of course, the little girl picked it up, looked at it, and they walked the rest of the way, and I was just like, "Oh my god, just shut up, Cheryl," but it disturbed me so much to see
Yeah.
that because, kids are going to, imitate what the adults
Mhm.
do, especially their parents, and I'm like, "That just what could possibly go wrong with that situation?" But, yeah, it just really, really, really upset me.
Yeah. And it's, I mean, truly, it's only going to get worse with technology.
Mhm,
And that's just the world we live in. The
mhm,
more, you know, technology advances, the more we're kind of disconnected with our immediate environment. and hopefully more people catch on to the fact that that's happening, and they kind of release themselves from that. I
Mhm.
mean, it truly is an addiction, so to speak, because I had to catch myself a lot of times to where I would have this habit of anytime kind of things were slow around the house, I'd reach in my pocket to grab my phone. And then so now I catch myself though, because as soon as I touch my phone, I realize what I'm doing and then I keep
Mhm.
it where it's at. But for a while there, it was habit for me just to reach in, pull it out, and not even have anything to do on it,
Right.
just that it's there. And then I would search for something to do. So truly, and that's the awareness part, like internally, right? To where we start to understand these things about ourselves that might be happening without truly our awareness. And that, as soon as we identify it and have an understanding of it, that we can start
Mhm.
making little changes, not big changes, because nothing ever happens overnight.
Mhm.
But just like I said, like when I reach into my pocket and touch my phone, that now tells me, hey, I'm about to look at my phone for no reason.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
then I just kind of back out of that and continue on with,
Again, it's that
whatever's in front of me.
awareness.
Yeah.
And like
Yeah.
you said, it happens just in small little increments. It's not like you're going to change overnight.
Mm-mm, not at all.
So give yourself some grace if anybody out there is trying to wean themselves off of automatically going for their cell phone. I also wanted to talk about like the hypervigilance because I think there's certain levels of hypervigilance. You've got the pathological level, but you have a healthy level too, where it's like, I don't think it's a bad thing to be just always paying attention. I want to put it to, that way rather than saying hypervigilant. But even, one time I walked into a liquor store to buy a bottle of wine, and I just walked in and something didn't feel right.
Mhm.
And these two guys had walked in front of me, and they weren't threatening. There was nothing about the way they were acting, but it's just like all of a sudden I could feel the hair on the back of my neck start to kind of like rise. And I thought, you know what? I don't need that bottle of wine. And I just turned out and
Mhm.
left. And I did check the local news later in the following day. Nothing ever happened in that store, but there was something about something made me feel uncomfortable that I just needed to leave. And
Mhm.
so that's part of either intuition or that situational type of awareness that something just didn't feel right. Even though a lot of times, if we are in a situation like that, we'll talk ourselves out of it and say, oh, you're just making it up. But talk about that a little bit, like that little voice or those little feelings or sensations that you get.
Yeah. So, which actually, when you talk about intuition, things like that, I don't know if you've ever read Gift of Fear by
Yes. Oh,
Gavin De
it's
Becker.
right down here with me.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's funny too, because, I, at first I try not to, I don't know, for what, my wife was the one who introduced me to that book. And then finally I did come around and well, I listened to the audiobook, which I think is a little bit better because he actually narrates it. And so,
Mhm.
um, it's when it comes to intuition and things like that, he does a better job explaining than I do. But one perspective that I take from it is that it's just your experience, talking to you subconsciously.
Mhm.
Because not every time are we going to know exactly what's happening. Just because sometimes maybe your frontal cortex, obviously the part of your brain that does a lot of the critical thinking, to where maybe that's not catching on as fast as the rest of your brain is, to where it sees something or
Mhm.
it hears something or it feels something or just, or it could be a very broad context of just like how certain things are interacting with each other that aren't very in your face, but they're very, very subtle. But somehow your body has seen that before, and like I said, subconsciously
Mhm.
that rings danger to you,
Mhm.
and then maybe consciously over time you start to understand exactly what that was, but in the moment it's not there yet. And I think that's what intuition is just, we your body is seeing what's abnormal. Sorry, your mind is seeing what's abnormal. It's just not able to translate it to your
Mhm.
active thought to where you're able to quickly identify it. But at the same time, it's definitely something not to be ignored. There's been
Mhm.
a lot of times to where, especially when he makes examples in his book, that intuition has saved people's lives, and they
Mhm.
didn't know it at the time. But then,
Mhm.
obviously, once they figured out certain information that they didn't have at the time, they realized, what had happened, and kind of how their intuition,
Mhm.
they were able to get the puzzle pieces that they were missing to show that full picture. And so, I mean, that's another thing. What intuition is it's you have missing puzzle pieces, but at the same time, it's enough to now tip you over to the threshold of like, I don't know if this is where I should be right now. And truly that's where it is. And that doesn't mean that you always just completely run away from the situation. And like I said before, maybe that just means that all of a sudden you now kind of switch it on, so to speak. And instead of just going on in your normal, rhythm or so to speak, that now you look up and you're actually paying attention to everything that's there instead of, just as we normally do, take glances of people, and then go back into our phones and things of that nature, to where, now we're actually, we're sitting more straight up. We're probably maybe getting into a little bit of a wider stance, because if we do need to take off or maybe make a move, then that's what it is. So not every single time do you have enough information to act on completely. And what I mean by act on, like decisive actions that are causing you to either run or defend yourself. But maybe it's just that you have these levels of awareness that you start to move through. And then from there, you start to gain a better picture. And then that's what allows you to make that decision, that decisive decision. And that's kind of in the military is what we call it, we call it a decisive point, to where it's the point in the mission to where either we pull out completely or it's go time and we have to complete it no matter what. And so that's kind of the decisive point in which, once you have that picture and you have enough information to act on, then that's when you act on it. And like I said before, then it's just gathering information, becoming more aware, and really trying to figure out the situation.
So basically, you are sharing a lot of military principles with your
Yes.
readers and with your
Yeah.
clients if you're working with them.
Yes, correct. It's I try not to harp on it too much. I mean, it is true. What I say in the book, yes, self-defense is much different than war. War is very broad. There's a lot of things going on, a lot of things happening, and that within itself is not self-defense. But what is self-defense in wartime is those personal accounts and those individual tactics and things of that nature that an individual bodies. Because like sort of just for example, base defense and that whole building a base and putting out security and things of that nature, all that is home defense. Now it looks a lot different because there's a lot of resources, a lot of moving parts, but all the concepts are still the same. And that's kind of I don't dive into it too deeply in the book, because like I said, I try not to specify a lot of things because it's different to a lot of different people. But what I do try to talk about is like layered security, things of that nature, and that's a military principle that can be adopted by civilian life. And then just those broader concepts that can be adapted. One thing I adapted is from the 5 principles of patrolling, I adapted the 4 principles of survival. And really it's just 4 principles that kind of align with military tactics, but they can be adapted to civilian life. And really a lot of that is nothing too drastic. It's just more so little habits that you start to take within your life. And like I said, it's not overnight. It doesn't happen overnight. It's something that you practice, but eventually it becomes a habit, and then you're doing it without even noticing it. And those are the types of concepts that I really try to introduce in my book, is those that because I'm a very conceptual person. If I understand the concept, then I can mold it to my own. And that's what I want readers to get out of this, is that that this is a concept that hopefully it's easily understandable. And if it's not, then obviously reach out to me, because I will be available. But at the same time, it's something that can be molded to your lifestyle, and you can make it your own, because we're all from different walks of life. We all have different backgrounds. We all have different stuff going on. And so these concepts aren't hard and fast rules. They're more so, so to speak, Play-Doh that would then be molded into whatever you need it to be.
That is incredibly valuable information. And I think that a skill set that everybody should have. And especially putting it in that context. It just sounds incredibly valuable. I mean, what could be better than having the tools to be able to protect yourself, your family, and maybe even save your life someday?
And that's the thing is self-defense, hopefully, because I've never had to use self-defense in my personal life, here in the States. Uh, but what I also tell people is that these are tangible skills, right? Sorry, these are transferable skills. And so the skills that you learn in self-defense and things of that nature can transfer to other aspects of your life. So that, just like when people train combatives and, people, they're not training to be UFC fighters and things of that nature. And that's truly what people, would think is the ultimate goal for people who train in combatives. But no, they just enjoy going into a gym. They enjoy the social aspect of it. They enjoy the fact that they're getting in shape, and then they enjoy the actual movements and the role that combatives have. And so that's really what I try to convey to people when I talk about self-defense. Is it's not about, hopefully you never have to use this in a real world situation. And I truly believe that. I don't think that it's something to where it's better to have and not need than need and not have type of deal. But at the same time, like I said before with alignment, these are skills that you're training that can be transferred over to other aspects of your life, whether it be your career, your personal life, or whatever else, especially the problem solving, right? Because if you're able to problem solve in a life-threatening situation, you will have no issues when it comes to the corporate world or your job or whatever else, because then you'll have that perspective to where, like, well, I'm not in danger right now. Why would I have a severe reaction or emotion attached to this problem? Like, now I can think rationally, now I can think through this and not have, because truly that's kind of what happens, is that our problem solving skills get a little altered when we have emotion behind it. And as long as when that's not there, we find it easier to solve these problems and kind of get through certain situations that aren't life threatening or something like that. So it's definitely, it's not just about self-defense. And that's why I say self-defense for self-development, because yes, it is going to prepare you if something was to happen, but it's also going to prepare you for much more.
Absolutely. Great, great segue there. So tell us about Mind, Shield, and Spear.
Yeah, so so Mind, Shield, and Spear, and you're talking about the company, correct?
Correct.
Or okay, yeah. So Mind, Shield, and Spear, one, I got those three elements kind of based off how I see the progression of self-defense. So mind is the first when it comes to uh, that's the first line of defense, so to speak, to where you're thinking through the problem set. There's problem solving, critical thinking, and then also you're going back to some of the training that you've already prepared in your mind when it comes to awareness and things of that nature. Second portion of that is shield, to where we're never the aggressor. A lot of people think that self-defense is aggressive, and it is in a certain way, but not the way that people are thinking of it to be. A lot of people, for whatever reason, they think that if you're training self-defense, that you're an aggressor, or that you're the ones who are picking these fights or whatever it might be. And that's the complete opposite. You are the victim of whatever situation, and you're having to defend yourself. And so shield is that next element. And what happens is that it's the having a safety plan already in place, that the planning stage is already over with, and it's just, and you've already practiced it, and so it's just implementing it. And then the last thing is spear. So spear, one, I use spear because a spear can be a weapon or a tool, right? So it can be for hunting, it could be for self-defense, and I want people to see that aspect of self-defense, like I said, with transferable skills. But then also a spear is very focused, and very and it's actually a pretty diverse weapon system. I mean, it could be used for various things, right? I mean, it has been through history, and so that's what I want people to understand, is that once you train these skills, you will be able to act forcefully, you will be able to act accurately, and things like that. So that's kind of like the three elements all put together. And hopefully what happens is there's a maybe you only reach certain elements of it. So maybe you never reach spear. So you're, because once you start to implement certain things like layer security and things like that, and deterrence, you only get to the shield portion. And then that saves you a lot of energy and a lot of when it comes to that. And that's truly what it's all about, is because I tell people this all the time. if I don't have to get in a fight, I don't want to get in a fight. If I'm in nice clothes, I don't want to get sweaty. Now I got to go home, take a shower, like all this stuff is like, and that's the thing is I wrestled in high school. I do jujitsu now. You would think that I would love to get in, a situation where I'm just like, me and another person is, just getting in this, this altercation, but truly, no, I don't want to ruin my day with something that, that could be avoided. So that's why there's other things like verbal de-escalation and things of that nature. So that's why with those three elements, I wanted to have a clear delineation between each, and that it is an escalation rather than just put them all together and they mix in well. It is truly, no, you start from the beginning and you work your way up depending on the situation.
It seems like when you do have that background of mind and shield, you're less of a target.
Oh, absolutely.
And
Yeah,
people there's something about you that people just can sense or feel.
yeah, in the military, we call them like hard targets. Targets that are a little bit more fortified for whatever reason. Maybe it's the structure itself, or maybe it's the personnel that are encompassed in that structure. But whatever it is, when it comes to an individual, really what that means is that when I'm out in public, one, I'm standing tall. I'm always making eye contact with people. That doesn't mean I'm staring them down, but it means that as we're passing each other, I make eye contact. I'll probably say, some type of greeting, and as we're walking by and things of that nature, because they done a study, and I forget where I heard this from, but what it was is that they what they did is they interviewed criminals in jail, and they were like, yeah. And so they showed them, I think, pictures of individuals, and they were rating them on how likely they were to commit whatever crime that they probably theft or some type of, or I wouldn't think they would ask them if they would assault this person, but at the same time, they were asking, what they thought about this person. And it was those individuals that, were kind of slouched or looking down or didn't have that kind of confidence within themselves, that they would choose to be more likely that they would victimize. And so that's why, as an individual, it comes down to just that appearance of knowing that you can take care of yourself, that is really going to deter criminals.
Yeah, there's a level of confidence in it. Like you said, you're not staring people down, but there's just the way you walk and move and look people in the eye and not looking at your cell phone. It just signals the fact that you're not an easy target.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So do you coach people? Are you actively coaching them, or is that in the plans, or?
No, that's in the plans. It's because I think truly what I'd like people to see it as is kind of life coaching in a way, to where the first session would be more so just speaking about your needs and personally what your goals are, and it'd just be all about what you bring to the table, so to speak. Not only like from an ability standpoint and needs assessment, but also what you talk to me about, because I'll leave the conversation open. But then from there, like, we devise a plan, like I said, to really fulfill those safety goals and stuff like that. And then it might be something to where maybe you just go off, you utilize your plan. I would be used more so as a reference than anything. Obviously, I would still be available. But at the same time, it would be more so just for maintenance, instead of like a personal trainer taking you out to the gym and being right next to you and counting out the sets. I would be more so that personal trainer who I would definitely educate you on everything beforehand, but at the same time, allow you to perform the training at your own pace and things like that. And especially, well, one, I don't have a physical space yet. So, but that is in the plans too, to have physical space and start to provide some of this in-person training, especially scenario based. That will be a lot of what it is. And like I said, hopefully VR, if I'm able to really find someone who wants to develop that type of situational awareness or scenario based training and virtual reality, I definitely would jump on that really, really quickly, because that's going to be more likely that individuals are just going to stay in their home, put on a virtual reality headset, and then go through a 5-minute scenario and then go back to doing whatever they were doing, instead of driving all the way to a training site, taking an hour out of their day, whatever, can accommodate people. And I think virtual reality is probably the next step in that. But yes, so that's kind of my model, to where, I can be as hands-on as I need to be, but I'd like it to be more so that I'm just the refinement portion, to where maybe you're kind of a little bit confused, or or maybe you've reached a milestone and you're like, well, where do we go from here? And then we'll just speak about it, and then from there we'll come up with another plan, and then it gets executed, and so it continues that cycle over again.
Well, it sounds very exciting. It sounds like a great plan.
Yeah, well, yeah, hopefully. And that's the thing is, obviously, I can only be where the market needs me to be. And so if that's where I stick, then I'm definitely going to stay there. But there are other aspects that I'm looking into as well. And truly it all depends on what the market dictates. But yes, that ideally that's what I would be doing.
So where can people get a hold of you? How can they find you, or where can they find you?
Yeah, so mindshieldandSpear.com is going to be where a lot of information is at. Obviously, my email too. So I monitor info at mindshieldandSpear.com. That'll be another. And like I said, I do personally monitor that. And then also, I do have a LinkedIn page. So if people wanted to connect with me there, and that way it's just an easy way to instant message, obviously, once you connect. But yeah, those three things. So mindshieldandSpear.com is going to have information up firsthand, and then the email address info at mindshieldandSpear.com, and then my LinkedIn page, which will have a link on the website
Love
as well.
LinkedIn. And your book.
So yes, self-defense for self-development. That it is complete. It is ready to go, and hopefully it will be launching sometime in the summer. And that all that information will be on the website itself. And then, like I said, it will be mostly on Amazon. And then I think there will be other outlets, but for the most part, if you just search for it on Amazon around summertime, it should be there.
Well, congratulations on the book. I think it's really exciting, and I think it is just so necessary. It seems like, this world is getting a little crazier day by day. So to be able to have those kind of, a guide, and to have somebody who can coach people into, practical self-defense, and just getting that mindset is just huge.
And truly, that's what it is. It's just mindset. You don't have to, like I said, you don't have to really change too much about yourself or your ability or anything like that. It's just about having that mindset and that awareness to where in perspective, because truly that's what it comes down to. We only know what we know, and so once you have that perspective, that's going to be leaps and bounds what it was before, and so that's truly all it is.
And putting down that cell phone.
Yeah,
I just had to
yes,
get that in
too.
there one more time.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, it's useful, but yes, it's also got a lot of negative to it as well.
Yeah, that's for sure. Well, John, thank you so much for being here today. I really
Well, thanks
appreciate
for having
it.
me.
Great conversation, so many wonderful tips and information for the audience. And, it's just been wonderful having you. So thank you. And once again, thank you for your service. I can't say that enough.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me. And I enjoyed being here as well.
Good. Excellent. And everybody, thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate you. And do remember, do check out John's book and get it. It's pretty valuable information. Check out his website, connect with him on LinkedIn. Feel free to ask him any questions once you do read the book. If you have any questions, you need any help, or you would like some coaching from him. Obviously, he knows what he's talking about. He's a great guy. And do remember to put down your cell phone. And that is the way of the FemiNinja.